The Vivo Z1x swaps the Vivo Z1 Pro's dual-tone gradient design with a gaudier color scheme that alternates between varying shades of the same color. The surface finish is glossy, making the phone highly prone to smudges and dust. The phone is also quite slippery. On the front, you will find a relatively small water drop notch with a thin earpiece above it. The display of the Vivo Z1x is protected by Shot Sensation 3D glass, which is an alternative to Corning's Gorilla Glass. The volume and power buttons are located on the right, and we struggle to reach the volume up button without adjusting the phone in our hands. The dedicated Google Assistant button and dual nano SIM card tray can be found on the left. A speaker, USB Type-C port and 3.5mm headphone jack are at the bottom. The Vivo Z1x is still relatively large and heavy at 189.6 grams, even though it is lighter than the Vivo Z1 Pro. One-handed usage is not easy unless you have fairly large hands, and reaching for content at the upper extremes of the display is a stretch. The Vivo Z1x runs FunTouch OS 9.1 based on Android 9 Pie. Our review unit was stuck on the July security patch. FunTouch OS is a heavily customized version of Android, and that may take some time to get used to. Most Android phones let you access quick settings toggles, notifications, etc. by swiping down from the top, but FunTouch OS puts these things in an iOS-like shortcut center that has to be accessed by swiping up from the bottom of the screen. And there's no app drawer in FunTouch OS either. However, there are a few nifty tools in FunTouch OS as well. You can quickly create a second instance of a compatible app on the home screen itself, and you can take a scrolling screenshot with ease. There is a file save feature that lets you hide media files, documents and other items for privacy. The dark mode is a neat addition as well, but instead of rendering a black background that is typically useful on AMOLED displays, FunTouch OS produces a dark shade of grey. There's a lot of bloatware with both in-house apps and third-party apps. The Vivo Z1x sports a 6.38-inch Full HD Plus display with a 19.5:9 aspect ratio. The device's Super AMOLED panel is sufficiently bright and crisp and renders vibrant colors. The color temperature is slightly cold by default, but you can adjust the color mode and temperature in the settings app. The viewing angles are also quite good, and there is minimal color shift when viewing content at an angle. Under daylight, we did not feel the need to crank the brightness up beyond the halfway mark to read emails and to use social media apps. But the reflective nature of the display sometimes proved problematic while watching videos. There's also an in-display fingerprint sensor on this device, and it unlocks the phone quickly. The Snapdragon 712 processor powering the Vivo Z1x proved to be a reliable performer. It was able to handle day-to-day tasks, multitasking and gaming with ease. Now, despite FunTouch OS being a heavily customized Android skin, we did not actually come across any instances of slowdown or stuttering. As for media performance, the phone speaker has a decent volume output, but some distortion and shrillness seeps in when the volume is set above the 80% mark. Vivo Z1x defaults to the high graphics presets in PUBG Mobile and Asphalt 9, and loading titles such as Mortal Kombat and Injustice, Gods Amongst Us, was also quick. We were pleasantly surprised by the Vivo Z1x's thermal performance, as there was minimal heating even after 30 to 50 minute long gaming sessions. The Vivo Z1x packs a 4500 mAh battery, which comfortably lasted us over a day. Even with around 2 hours of playing PUBG Mobile at high graphics settings, calling, social media usage and day-long internet connectivity, the phone still had around 30% left in the tank at the end of the day. In our HD video loop test, the phone lasted 18 hours and 52 minutes before shutting down. The supplied 22.5 watt charger took the battery from empty to 50% in just 38 minutes, and it took around an hour and a half to charge it fully. The Vivo Z1x packs a 48 megapixel primary camera with the Sony IMX582 sensor, assisted by an 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera and a 2 megapixel depth sensor. The rear camera took vibrant pixel bin photos in daylight. Close-up shots were a strong suit of the Vivo Z1x, as they retained a healthy amount of surface detail and there was minimal edge bleeding. Focus locking was quick and accurate for the most part. Landscape photos, however, appeared overprocessed with an underwhelming amount of detail. The phone also struggles with dynamic range in challenging scenarios, and despite rendering textures in the sky with decent clarity, colors looked somewhat suppressed. The native AI beauty mode helps with the dynamic range issue to some extent and makes photos look more vibrant, but it does so at the cost of sharpness and softening at the periphery. Low light photos, on the other hand, turned out grainy with a lot of noise. The dedicated night mode adds some color to the frame and makes elements look a bit sharper, but the results are far from what we'd call impressive. The wide-angle camera comes in handy for capturing more people or objects in one scene, but unsurprisingly the quality of shots is lower compared to those shot using the main sensor. Wide-angle photos looked dim and were less sharp. Portrait shots had decent subject separation, but the application of the blur effect was inconsistent. One can adjust the blur effect even after capturing portrait photos by using the preloaded album app. The 32 megapixel front camera took crisp selfies with punchy colors. As far as videos go, 4K and 1080p recording maxes out at 30 frames per second, which is a little disappointing because phones that cost lower can shoot Full HD videos at 60 fps. 4K videos on the other hand turned out jerky. As for the actual video quality, 1080p videos are stabilized well and color reproduction is also decent, but the focus lock is jittery. The Vivo Z1x is a meaningful upgrade over its predecessor but underperforms in the camera department despite commanding a premium. It has an eye-catching design, solid build quality, good performance and battery life. On the flip side, it's bulky, could have had better cameras, and we think FunTouch OS could use refinement.